The red sky of Kepler 4b grew darker each day. Elder scientist HFY walked slowly across the metal floor of the great communication building. His long, thin fingers shook as he touched the control panel. This would be the last message his people would ever send to the stars. Outside the thick windows, he could see the Zephyrian people moving through their city. They walked quietly, their purple skin pale with fear. Everyone knew what was coming. The star that gave them life was dying, and it would take their world with it. The numbers do not lie, HFY whispered to himself. He had checked them 100 times. The deadly storm of light and heat from their dying star would reach their planet in 47 days. Nothing could survive it. Nothing could stop it. Young Nalera ran into the room, her breathing fast. She was his best student, barely past her naming day, but already smarter than most elders. Her violet eyes were wide with worry. "Teacher, the evacuation ships from the nearby systems," she said quickly. "I did the math again. Even their fastest ships would take 200 years to reach us." HFY nodded slowly. He had known this truth for days, but hearing it spoken made his heart feel heavy. Their people had lived in peace for 3,000 years. They had built beautiful cities, created art that could make stone weep, and discovered secrets of the universe that other races could only dream of. All of it would be ash in 47 days. "Then we will do what we have always done," he said, his voice steady despite his fear. "We will learn until the very end." He turned to the great transmission device. It was their most powerful machine, able to send messages across the galaxy in days instead of years. The Zephyrians had used it to share knowledge with other peaceful races, to send poetry to distant worlds, to ask questions about the mysteries of space. Now it would carry their final words. "Help me prepare the cultural archive," HFY told Nalera. "Everything we are, everything we have learned, must be preserved." They worked through the night and into the next day. Other Zephyrians came to help. They brought their greatest books, their most beautiful music, their mathematical formulas that could bend light itself. Scientists brought their discoveries about how planets formed and why stars died. Artists brought paintings that captured the way morning light looked on their purple mountains. Children brought their drawings. "Why do we do this?" asked Tiaranmore, one of the younger scientists. "If no one can reach us in time, who will find these things?" HFY looked up from the archive machine. "Perhaps no one. Perhaps beings we have never met, 1,000 years from now. Perhaps species that do not yet exist. It does not matter. What matters is that we try." The work took 3 days. When it was finished, the archive contained the story of an entire civilization. Every song they had ever sung, every equation they had ever solved, every dream they had ever dreamed. On the 4th day, HFY stood alone before the transmission device. The deadly storm was closer now. He could see it in the sky, a wall of fire and poison light moving toward their world like the anger of a dead god. He activated the machine and spoke into the void. "This is Elder Scientist HFY of the Sephorian people on the world you call Kepler 4b," he began, his voice carrying across space. "Our star dies, and we die with it. In 43 days, the storm will reach us. We cannot escape." He paused, looking out at his doomed world. In the distance, he could see Zephyrian families holding each other, trying to find comfort in their final days. "We have lived in peace for 3,000 years, he continued. "We have hurt no one. We have shared our knowledge freely with all who asked. We have tried to understand the universe and our place in it." His voice grew stronger. "We send this message not to beg for salvation, for we know none can come in time. We send it so that someone, somewhere, might know that we existed, that we loved, that we learned, that we tried to make the galaxy a little brighter with our presence." He uploaded their cultural archive to the transmission beam. Thousands of years of civilization, compressed into streams of light and data, racing toward distant stars. If you receive this message, know that the Zephyrians lived with honor. Remember us not for how we died, but for how we chose to spend our final days. We choose to preserve beauty instead of creating weapons. We choose to send knowledge instead of curses. We choose hope over despair. Kethvar's finger hovered over the transmission button. Once he pressed it, there was nothing left to do but wait for the end. Whoever finds this message, learn from us. Live in peace. Help others when you can. And remember that even in the darkest moment, there is always time to reach out with kindness. He pressed the button. The message flew into space, carrying the last hope of a dying world, toward stars that seemed too distant to care. Kethvar walked outside and looked up at the growing storm. In 43 days, his people would be gone, but their message would travel forever, a bottle thrown into an ocean of stars. He never expected anyone to answer. 3 days passed like a bad dream. Kethvar spent his time helping other Zephyrians prepare for the end. Some families chose to record messages for their children who had died long ago. Others painted pictures of their favorite places. A few scientists kept working on experiments, determined to discover something new even with death approaching. The communication building stayed mostly empty. There was no point in listening for messages anymore. No one in the galaxy could help them now. But Nalera could not sleep. Every night, she went to the communication building and checked the receivers. She told herself she was being foolish. She knew the math. She knew no rescue could come. But something inside her refused to give up hope. On the third night after their final message, something impossible happened. The communication machine started beeping. Nalera stared at the blinking lights, in shock. An incoming signal. A strong one. She ran to wake Kethvar, her feet pounding on the metal walkways between buildings. "Teacher, teacher," she shouted as she burst into his home. Someone answered. Someone answered our message. Kethvar sat up slowly. He was old and tired, and the stress of their situation had made him weaker. "Child, you must have made a mistake. Check the machine again." "No mistake." Nalera pulled at his arm. "Please come. The signal is getting stronger." They ran together, through the dark streets. Other Zephyrians saw them and followed, hope flickering in their eyes for the first time in days. By the time they reached the communication building, a small crowd had gathered. Kethvar looked at the display screen and felt his heart stop. The signal was real. It was strong. And according to the readings, it was coming from somewhere impossibly close. "The delay time shows only 3 days travel," he whispered. "That cannot be correct." Nalera worked quickly at the controls. "I am cleaning up the signal now," she said. Her fingers danced over the buttons, almost ready to decode. The crowd grew larger. Word was spreading through the city that someone had answered their call for help. Zephyrians pressed against the windows, their purple faces filled with desperate hope. "Ready?" Nalera announced. The speakers crackled with static. Then a voice came through, speaking words in a language none of them had ever heard before. The voice was rough, like someone who had not slept in days. "Can you understand this?" Kethvar asked the computer. "Working," the computer replied. "This language is not in my files, but I am learning from the signal. Please wait." The alien voice kept talking. It sounded determined, almost angry. Other voices joined it, all speaking in the same strange language. "Translation ready," the computer announced. Suddenly the voices became clear. "This is Captain Han, of the ship called New Dawn," the first voice said. The words were simple, but firm. "We received your message. We are coming to help." The communication building fell completely silent. Outside, Zephyrian stopped walking and stared at the building. Even the wind seemed to stop blowing. "This cannot be real," whispered Tren-More. Another voice came through the speakers, this one speaking their language much better. "Citizens of Kepler 44-B, this is Admiral Kim of the Third Fleet. We call ourselves humans. Our home is near the star. You know, as Soul. We know about the storm that threatens your world. We are already traveling to reach you. Nilera pulled up her star charts with shaking hands. Sol system, she muttered, searching through the data. Here it is. But teacher, our surveys show that system has only small worlds. Nothing advanced lives there. The human voice continued. We understand you have 40 days left before the storm hits. Our ships will reach you in 6 days. We are sending you information about how to prepare for evacuation. Data began flowing through the communication system. Landing coordinates, supply lists, safety instructions. The level of detail was incredible. These humans had clearly been planning this rescue for days. 6 days. Kethfar stared at the incoming data. Even with the fastest ships in the galaxy, it should take months to travel from Sol system to here. Maybe their ships are faster than anything we know, Nilera suggested. More voices joined the transmission. Human voices, all speaking with the same determination. This is Dr. Park. We are bringing medical teams for anyone hurt by early radiation. Engineer Lee here. We have materials to build temporary shelters if needed. Captain Yoon, reporting. Transport ships are loaded and ready. The voices kept coming. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Each human seemed to have a specific job in what sounded like a massive rescue operation. How many ships are coming? Kethfar asked, speaking into the communicator. Admiral Kim answered. Every ship we could find. Every human who could help. We received your message and mobilized everything we have. But why? Nilera asked, tears running down her purple cheeks. We are strangers to you. Why would you risk everything for people you have never met? There was a pause. When Admiral Kim spoke again, her voice was quiet, but strong. Because someone needed help, she said simply, that is enough. Outside the communication building, the impossible news was spreading through the city. Humans were coming. Strangers from a distant star had heard their cry for help and were risking everything to save them. For the first time in days, Zephyrian children began to laugh again. Kethbar looked up at the dying star in the sky, then back at the communication device, still buzzing with human voices, organizing their rescue. Impossible, he whispered. But hope, he realized, had never needed to be possible. It only needed to be real. 6 days later, the sky above Kepler 442 began to tear apart. Kethfar stood on the observation platform of the tallest building in the city, watching something that should have been impossible. Space itself was ripping open like fabric, creating holes of absolute darkness against the red sky. What is that? Nilera whispered beside him. Before he could answer, ships began coming through the holes. Not 1 or 2 ships, but hundreds. They poured out of the torn space like water through a broken dam, filling the sky with metal and light. The ships were unlike anything in the galactic databases. Some were sleek and white, clearly built for war or exploration. Others looked like they had been cargo haulers or passenger ships before being hastily converted for rescue work. A few seemed to be held together with metal patches and hope, but they all moved with the same purpose. Attention citizens of Kepler 442b, a voice boomed from speakers across the city. It was Admiral Kim, the human who had promised to come. This is the Terran evacuation fleet. We are here to take you to safety. The largest ships began descending toward the planet. They were massive, each one big enough to carry thousands of people. Smaller ships spread out across the continents, like protective birds guarding their nests. Kethfar watched a transport ship land in the designated area outside the city. It was bigger than their largest building, but it settled onto the ground as gently as a falling leaf. Steam rose from its hull, and lights flickered along its sides. Come, he told Nilera. We must meet them. They walked to the landing zone, with hundreds of other Zephyrians. Everyone was quiet, still unable to believe what they were seeing. Children held their parents' hands tightly. Elders leaned on walking sticks, their old eyes wide with wonder. A door opened in the side of the human ship. Light spilled out, and figures appeared in the doorway. The first human to step onto KEPLER-4 to be was smaller than Kethvar had expected. She was barely 2 meters tall, with dark hair and serious eyes. She wore a blue uniform with symbols that meant nothing to the Zephyrians, but her posture showed she was someone important. "I am Admiral Kim," she said, walking forward with confident steps. "We spoke over the communication system." Behind her came other humans. Captain Han was there, looking tired but determined. Dr. Park carried a medical bag and was already scanning the crowd for anyone who looked sick. Engineer Lee had some kind of tool in her hands and was studying the Zephyrian buildings. More humans kept coming out of the ship. They all moved with quick, efficient movements, like they had done this many times before. "How is this possible?" Kethvar asked Admiral Kim. "Your ships, your speed, your technology. We have studied space travel for centuries, and what you have done should be impossible." Admiral Kim smiled, but it was a sad smile. "Humans are good at doing impossible things when lives are at stake," she said. "We learned that skill the hard way." Captain Han was already talking to other Zephyrians, getting information about the population centers and how many people needed to be evacuated. Dr. Park had set up a medical station and was treating Zephyrians who were showing early signs of radiation sickness. "How many people live on your world?" Admiral Kim asked. 17 million, Nalera answered. "But surely your ships cannot carry so many." "Our ships can carry 18 million, Engineer Lee said, looking up from her scanning device. "We brought everything we could find. Military transports, passenger ships, cargo haulers, even some ships that were supposed to be scrapped." Kethvar stared at her. "You risked all those ships and all those lives for strangers." Admiral Kim looked at him with eyes that held deep sadness and deep strength. "Captain, 300 years ago, my people almost destroyed themselves with wars and hatred. We learned something important from that time. The universe is big and dangerous, and we are all alone in it unless we choose to help each other." More ships were landing now. The sky was full of human vessels, each one bringing hope to the dying world. Some of the ships looked damaged, as if they had traveled very far, very fast, to get here. "We detected massive energy readings when you arrived," Kethvar said. "What kind of engines do your ships use?" Captain Han and Admiral Kim exchanged a look. "We call it fold space technology," Admiral Kim said carefully. "It allows us to bend the laws of physics in small areas. It is dangerous and uses enormous amounts of power, but it lets us travel much faster than normal space drives." "You developed this technology just to rescue us?" Nalera asked in amazement. "We have been working on it for years," Dr. Park said, joining the conversation. "But this is the first time we have used it on such a large scale. We were not sure it would work." Kethvar felt his heart grow cold. "You risked your entire fleet on untested technology." "Yes," Admiral Kim said simply. "Why would you do such a thing?" Admiral Kim looked up at the red sky, where the stellar storm was growing stronger each day. "Because sometimes the right thing to do is also the most dangerous thing to do. And sometimes you have to choose between being safe and being human." Around them, human teams were setting up evacuation centers and medical stations. The work was fast and organized, but Kethvar could see the strain on their faces. These people had pushed themselves and their technology to the limit to get here. "You came so far," he whispered. "Not far enough yet," Admiral Kim replied. "We still have to get everyone out alive." 20 days had passed since the humans arrived. The evacuation was moving faster than anyone had thought possible, but death was moving faster. Admiral Kim stood on the bridge of her flagship, staring at the wall of fire growing in the sky. The stellar storm had changed. Instead of arriving in 15 days as predicted, it would hit the planet in less than 12 hours. "Admiral," Captain Yoon said, her voice tight with worry. "The radiation readings are getting dangerous. Our ship shields are starting to fail." Kim looked at the numbers on her screen. 9 million Zephyrians were safe aboard the evacuation fleet, floating in space, far from the dying planet, but 8 million more were still on the surface, waiting for the last transport ships to carry them to safety. "How many ships are still on the planet?" she asked. 47 transport ships, plus the medical vessels, Captain Yoon reported. "Captain Han's ship is among them." Kim closed her eyes for a moment. The math was simple and terrible. There was not enough time to get everyone out safely. The humans on the planet knew this, but they kept working anyway. "Send a message to all ground teams," Kim ordered. "Emergency evacuation protocols. Get the civilians out first." "What about our people?" They knew the risks when they volunteered. On the planet's surface, Captain Han was loading the last group of Zephyrian families onto his ship. The New Dawn was packed far beyond its normal capacity. Children sat in the cargo holds. Elderly Zephyrians filled the hallways. Every space that could hold a person was being used. "Sir, we are carrying 3,000 people," his navigator reported. "The ship is not designed for this many." "How are the engines?" Han asked. "Engineer Lee says she can give us more power, but the ship might not survive the stress." Han looked out the window at the approaching wall of fire. The horizon was already glowing red, and the air itself seemed to be burning. "Tell Engineer Lee to give us everything she has," he said. Dr. Park's voice came over the communication system from her medical ship. "Han, we have a problem. Some of the Zephyrians are too sick to move. The radiation is affecting them badly." "How many?" 200, maybe more. Han felt his heart sink. The sickest Zephyrians would die if they were moved roughly, but they would all die if they stayed on the planet. "Bring them anyway," he decided. "We will figure out how to help them in space." Engineer Lee was working in the engine room, pushing the ship's power systems beyond their limits. Sparks flew from damaged circuits. The hull was groaning under the stress of carrying so many people. "Captain," she called over the comm, "I can give you enough power to reach orbit, but we might lose main engines halfway up." "Do it." The last transport ship lifted off from Kepler-4, for to be just as the first wave of deadly radiation hit the atmosphere. The sky turned white hot, and the ground began to steam. Han felt his ship shake as they climbed through air that was becoming poison. Warning lights flashed all over the bridge. The hull temperature was rising quickly. "Shields at 40%. And falling," his navigator reported. "Keep climbing." "Sir, the children in cargo hold 3 are getting scared. The Zephyrians are asking what is happening." Han looked at the radiation readings. They were climbing into a storm of death, carrying 3,000 innocent lives. The ship was falling apart around them, but they had to keep going. "Tell them, we are taking them home," he said. In space above, Admiral Kim watched the last ships struggle to reach safety. Several transports were trailing fire and debris as their hulls burned in the radiation storm. One ship, the Bright Star, had lost its main engines and was drifting back toward the planet. "Send rescue ships," she ordered. "Admiral, we would lose more ships trying to save them." Kim looked at the screen showing the Bright Star. It carried 1,500 Zephyrian refugees and 30 human crew members. "Send the rescue ships anyway." Captain Yoon nodded and relayed the orders. 3 human ships turned back toward the planet, flying into the wall of radiation to save their comrades. The New Dawn was barely holding together when it finally cleared the planet's gravity. Half its hull was melted, its engines were dead, and its life support was failing. But 3,000 Zephyrians were alive. Captain Han collapsed in his chair as rescue ships approached to transfer the refugees to safer vessels. Through the bridge windows, he could see Kepler-4 for to be disappearing under a wave of fire that would burn for years. "How many did we lose?" he asked quietly. The answer came from Admiral Kim's flagship. 14 ships destroyed, 437 humans killed. Han felt tears on his face. So many good people, gone forever. And how many did we save? 8.5 million Zephyrians are safe. Han nodded and closed his eyes. The price had been terrible, but they had done what they came to do. They had reached out to strangers in need and pulled them back from death as the human fleet turned away from the burning world. Carrying their new friends toward safety, one thought echoed through every ship. This is what it means to be human. 3 months later, elder scientist Kethvar stood in the observation room of the human colony ship New Hope. Through the large windows, he could see something that still amazed him every day. Zephyrian children were playing with human children in the ship's recreation areas. They chased each other through the corridors, laughing in 2 different languages, but understanding each other perfectly. The purple-skinned Zephyrian young ones were teaching the humans how to sing their traditional songs. The human children were showing the Zephyrians how to play games with bouncing balls. They adapt so quickly, Kethvar said to Admiral Kim, who stood beside him watching the scene. Children always do, Kim replied with a small smile. They do not see differences the way adults do. They just see friends. In the 3 months since the evacuation, the humans had done far more than just save the Zephyrian people. They had helped them plan for a new future. Human survey ships were already exploring distant star systems, looking for a new world where the Zephyrians could build their cities again. Human engineers worked with Zephyrian scientists every day, sharing knowledge and ideas. They were designing new homes that would honor Zephyrian culture while using human technology to keep everyone safe and comfortable. Your people gave everything for strangers, Kethvar said quietly. We still do not understand why you would do such a thing. Admiral Kim was silent for a long moment. She watched a human girl help a young Zephyrian boy reach a toy that had rolled under a table. The boy's purple skin was still pale from radiation sickness, but he was getting stronger every day thanks to human medical care. A few hundred years ago, Kim finally said, my people almost destroyed themselves. We had terrible wars that killed millions of humans. We poisoned our own world with weapons and hatred. We almost became extinct because we could not learn to help each other. She pointed to the children playing together. We learned something from that dark time. The universe is huge and dangerous. Space is cold and empty. If we do not help each other, we will all die alone. Nalera approached them, carrying a datapad. She was working as a liaison between the human and Zephyrian scientists, helping both species share their knowledge. Elder, she said to Kethvar, the humans have received 7 more distress calls from across this part of the galaxy. They are preparing another rescue fleet. Kethvar looked at Admiral Kim in shock. You would do this again? Risk your ships and your people for more strangers? As many times as necessary, Kim said without hesitation. Through the ship's communication system, Captain Han's voice could be heard, making announcements. He was organizing the next rescue mission. Many of the humans who had survived the Kepler-4 evacuation were volunteering for the new operation, even though they had barely recovered from their injuries. But why? Kethvar asked. You have already done more than anyone could ask. You saved our entire civilization. Why continue to risk everything for people you have never met? Admiral Kim turned away from the window to face him directly. Her eyes held the same sadness and strength he had seen on that first day when the humans landed on his dying world. Because that is what humans do, she said simply. We reach out, we help. We do not abandon people who need us, even when it is dangerous, or difficult, or impossible. She gestured toward the busy corridors of the colony ship, where humans and Zephyrians worked together, preparing for the next mission. Every species we save makes the galaxy a little less empty. Every civilization we help becomes a friend who might help others in the future. Every time we choose to act, instead of walking away, we make the universe a better place for everyone. Kethvar felt his heart swell with an emotion he did not have words for. "You have changed everything," he whispered. "No," Kim said, shaking her head. "You have changed everything too. The Zephyrians who are alive today will grow up knowing that help can come from anywhere, even when it seems impossible. Some of them will become rescuers themselves. Your children will reach out to help other species, just as we reached out to help you." As if summoned by her words, young Zephyrian voices could be heard over the ship's communication system. They were volunteering to join the next rescue mission, wanting to help save other people the way they had been saved. "The reach continues," Nilera said softly. Captain Han's voice came over the speakers again, announcing that the new rescue fleet would depart in 2 days. The destination was a system where an ice age was threatening to destroy an entire planet. Of peaceful farmers? Kethvar looked out at the stars through the observation window. Somewhere out there, desperate people were looking up at those same stars, hoping for help that seemed impossible. But now he knew something they did not know. Yet help was coming. Word of the impossible rescue at Kepler 44 to be had spread across the galaxy. Some civilizations dismissed it as a myth. Others called it reckless foolishness. But in the dark corners of space, when disaster struck and hope seemed lost, a new phrase had begun to spread from world to world. It was whispered by parents too, frightened children during storms. It was spoken by scientists facing unsolvable problems. It was shouted by anyone who refused to give up, even when everything seemed impossible. "Hold on," they said, looking up at the stars. "The humans are coming, and they always did."